In the wake of declining agriculture and manufacturing sectors, coupled with rising costs and the erosion of preferential market access, the challenge of improving Barbadian economic security by diversifying away from the tourism industry became paramount. And in 2002, the government of Barbados supported the CARICOM initiative to set up regional coalitions of services industries in the member territories. Thus, the Barbados Coalition of Service Industries was established. The BCSI today represents the interests of over 40 service sector associations, from artists to architects, medical practitioners to masqueraders, and over 500 companies, comprising of over 4,000 Barbadian service providers. Timothy Odell of the CARICOM Secretariat outlines CARICOM's role in establishing services coalitions across the region.
Barbados was, I think, the first member state that actually pursued the model, and Barbados was then able to get its coalition up and running. Mind you, through a lot of hard work by dedicated persons, including the representatives from the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Center for International Services, the Director of International Business, the Secretary itself, and a number of people, including at that time the President of the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers.
Two of the founders of the BCSI talked candidly about their involvement in the early days of the establishment of the coalition.
When we started discussions on establishing a Barbados Coalition of Service Industries, I was the Director of International Business in the Ministry of Economic Development, as it then was. At that time, there were quite a few issues that were before Barbados, and we were involved in a number of different types of negotiations. At that point in time, we had the OECD initiative on harmful tax competition. We were involved in negotiations for the establishment of the Free Trade Area of the Americas, and my department had responsibility for services. At that time, we were also involved in the World Trade Organization negotiations. So there was quite a lot going on, and the emphasis was on services. When we say services, we mean services excluding tourism. So a lot of writing had been done on that. It was felt that for the Caribbean region, that services was critical in terms of continuing to diversify the Barbados economy. And we had to find a mechanism by which we could make sure that we pursue that. Because for a number of service providers in medicine, law, engineering, education, certainly did not see themselves as individuals that had to earn foreign exchange for the country. The industries that were required to do that would be agriculture, especially through sugar, rum, and then the tourist sector. But certainly doctors really did not see themselves as having any responsibility to earn foreign currency. Attorneys did not see themselves in that way. And we thought it was very important that individuals started to focus really seriously on services as a foreign exchange earning opportunity. That is why we came up with the notion of a coalition of service industries. Being involved in the negotiations, because the negotiations at the FTA level, at the WTO level, with the OECD, all of these things were going on at the same time. And at some point in time, you had to ask yourself, and I asked myself, what is the point of engaging in all of these negotiations if at the end of the day, if you negotiate something wonderful for your country, and your country still does not have the right mechanism by which to pursue services, but then all you would have is a nice agreement which would go on a shelf somewhere. You had to have some kind of institution that would take the text that you negotiated at the FTA and the WTO, and whatever you got out of the OECD, who could take whatever it is that you got and run with it in such a way that it would make a difference to persons providing services in Barbados. At the same time, when we were having our discussions, the CARICOM Secretariat was the one that came up with the idea of setting up coalitions across the region. So it was a moment in time. They were thinking exactly the same thing that we were thinking, and the two managed to come together.
In 2001, I was the president of the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers. One of my duties was to review any legislation or any agreements that Barbados was signing or intended to sign or had signed that could negatively affect Barbados engineers. We formed the Barbados Professional Services Export Committee on the 30th of March 2002. The draft final report was issued on May 2002, and I was preparing to disband that committee when Timothy Odell from CARICOM suggested that we shouldn't disband it, that we should develop ourselves into a coalition of service providers. So I called for a meeting of the Barbados Professional Services Export Committee. The meeting was to be held on the 19th of July 2002. And they agreed to set up a task force to investigate what the aims and objectives of the committee and the resource requirements, etc. And that task force provided its report, and it was accepted, and therefore we held our first annual general meeting of the Barbados Coalition of Service Providers on the 20th of October 2002, and we decided that we would have a formal launch on the 15th of November 2002. And that was held, and that was the start of the Barbados Coalition of Service Industries.
The BCSI started with merely 3 staff members and the mandate to develop and diversify the local services sector.
The templates for coalitions that existed around the world were in countries like the United States. There was a coalition in Europe, one in Hong Kong, in London, and so forth. And these were massive coalitions who were dealing with large international companies like large banks or large insurance companies or large telecommunication companies. Our membership were all service associations, which was never articulated before in another coalition, and small and medium-sized enterprises. And by medium, I mean Caribbean medium, which is still small at best by international standards. So we had to take on a different role. And at first, we were struggling with, what do we need to do? How do we need to get the message across? If we want to help people to take advantage of export opportunities, what needs to be done in order to get these people to that point where they can then seize an opportunity and run with it? There's obviously work that needs to be done leading up to that point. Or if we wanted to comment on trade policies or on negotiation offerings or so forth, we needed to educate our service providers on what this meant, and would it be in their best interest. We needed to do just training to even enable them to have a voice.
Service providers were generally extremely receptive of us, and I think it had a lot to do with the moment as well as with our approach to doing certain things. We were empowered to a very high level. We had a high level of accountability to report to, but we were empowered to be creative in the way we engage with our stakeholders. We were empowered to be present in at important decision-making moments. We were empowered to shape the future of the coalition, as it were. In fact, some of the things that are being done by the coalition now were conceptualized back in 2004.